Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Dr. Ed Daube. Ed grew up an emotions avoider before becoming the emotions doctor. He developed his emotions toolbox while serving as a clinical psychologist for the California Department of Corrections Juvenile Division. And he employed this emotions toolbox with both the inmates and the staff because they both were dealing with past and present trauma. They both were dealing with communications issues. They both were dealing with stress and pressures with the situations they found themselves in. And of course, they all needed to work better together. And now retired, he spends the majority of his time working hard to correct much of the misinformation that's been spread about emotions, where they come from, the roles they play, and what we can do with them. As a result, he has a very thorough blog, link in the show notes, where he dives in depth on his emotion toolbox, how we experience emotions, the roles they play, and so much more. I highly recommend you check it out after you listen to this conversation. And in this conversation, I'm really excited as we dive into how we can use emotions as tools, how we can bridge gaps with others. He's going to talk about his basic relationship rule, which is very important for all of us. And he's going to walk us through his step-by-step process for controlling our emotions and so much more. This is a great conversation, an engaging conversation. He really articulates his processes very well, and we can relate them to all of our conversations, business, personal, family, and beyond. Thank you so much for being here for another week. We really appreciate it. Please, while you're here, take a quick minute, like the show, share the show, subscribe to the show, leave us your feedback and comments. We would love to hear from you. And take a quick second to check out our sponsors. Head over to humantel.com. That's where you can start developing the skill set necessary to recognize what people are likely thinking and feeling by identifying changes in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. Enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off their best-in-class training. I've done it myself. I highly recommend it. For the professional interviewers listening, please head over to CertifiedInterviewer.com to get all your questions answered on both the International Association of Interviewers and the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. Qualifications, roles, responsibilities, impact on career, all of that is there. Check it out. And while you're online, please head over to Inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and more to teach them how to apply the strategic observation and persuasive communication skills necessary to uncover hidden value in all of their high-impact conversations. We really appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. So now, without further ado, I introduce to you Dr. Ed Daube. Good morning, Ed. It is so great to see you. I really thank you for taking the time to be here today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the interview.
Oh, it's my pleasure. In going through the materials, getting ready for the conversation, I'm very intrigued by your methodology, how you got here, how we all can use it. I feel like as a professional who communicates in any capacity, which is all of us, developing a better understanding of where our emotions come from, where other people's emotions come from, how we can embrace them and use them as opposed to getting frustrated, which is an emotion, I guess, by them, is a really big opportunity for all of us. And where I would love to start the conversation, if you're okay with it, is something that I know you've talked about before as well. How can we learn to use emotions as tools?
That's an excellent question. Let me start by explaining how I came up with a model. When I started working, I worked in an institution for young female adolescents. It was a correctional setting in California, the California Youth Authority. And I found myself in a situation where I was trying to work with these young women, all of whom had serious histories of multiple abuse. And their way of dealing with their emotions was either to act out and hurt themselves or hurt others through their criminal activity. So I was charged with doing therapy with these young women, some of whom were women of color. Now, I'm a white male, not female, not of color. So I had to figure out a way to bridge that gap. I also had to work with jaded correctional staff, mostly male, who didn't like emotions because they thought they were messy, didn't understand them, didn't want to deal with them. They just wanted them to disappear. So what I needed to do is I needed to come up with a way to explain both to the young women and to the staff what emotions were and what the purpose that they served and where they came from. So I came up with a metaphor of emotions as tools. And I did that, Mike, for this reason. The wards, the young women knew what tools were. They knew about cell phones. They knew about remote TV remotes. The staff knew about tools because they had to learn how to use handcuffs and mace and all those things. So they could all relate to the idea of emotions as tools. And what that did is that made the whole idea of emotions, it took away all the what's the word I'm looking for? It made it easier to approach the subject. It wasn't something that was scary. Okay, it's a tool. When I have a tool, I have to learn how to use that tool in order to get the most benefit from it. So that was my approach. So I developed the emotions as tools model. Now, from that, then I needed to explain what emotions are and where they come from. And that's the emotional process. And if you understand that, the idea of having a tool that you can use and access and use for your own benefit now makes sense. So the way the emotional process works is all of us are constantly scanning our environment. We're scanning it for threats. We're scanning it for situations. And from those scans, our brain makes a prediction based on culture, past experience, and what's going on in the environment to keep us safe. So the brain makes a decision, if you will, on what's going on and the emotion that's needed in order to help us deal with that situation. So if it's, for example, the brain perceives a threat, it's going to then generate an emotional reaction very quickly, which prepares our body to deal with that threat. Now, that does two things. First of all, what it does is you need to understand the brain isn't always right. So if you're on a hike, for example, and you see something ahead of you and you recoil only to realize after you've assessed it that it's a stick and not a snake, that's fine. The brain has protected you. So the way the emotional process works, as I was saying, is the brain is constantly scanning. It then creates an emotional reaction very quickly, and you then react. Now, there's a couple of things that happen here. Your reaction is very quick. And because it's so quick, it leads you and all of us to believe that our emotions control us. That's a myth. They do not. The brain sets up the automatic reaction, which it needs to, by the way, to keep you safe. But after that, after you've done the initial reaction, you can then take a step back. And when you take a physical step back, that creates physical safety. When you take a breath, that then lowers your arousal, which creates psychological safety and enables you to take the next step, which is to assess your situation. And when you assess the situation, you can say, what's going on? What's happening? How do I need to respond? And that is where your control comes in and enables you to use the emotions as tools to make your life better and improve your relationships. Now, from that point, you need to understand that each emotion communicates to you a different message. The message of anger is that there's a threat, and I'm prepared to go to war to eliminate that threat. So anger prepares you for battle. The message of anxiety is there may be a threat in the future, and that threat may harm me. So I need to decide, how do I look for information? How do I take action? What do I need to do to possibly minimize or eliminate that threat? That's what my students do, by the way, when they have to take an exam. They get anxious about the exam, the anxiety leads them to study, and then they can eliminate the threat. Then the message of sadness is, I perceived a loss and I need to withdraw, preserve my energy so that I can deal with the loss. So to put that all together, if you understand the process, the emotional process, you're scanning, you have an emotional reaction, you then take a step back, you assess what's going on, and you decide what you want to do. You decide what you want to do based on the message of the emotion that you're experiencing. So you can say, how real is the threat? What do I need to do? What actions do I need to take in order to deal with the threat that I perceive? Now, it's easy for me to describe, but it's a process that you need to learn how to do. And that's understandable if you think about learning how to ride a bicycle. Your parent puts you on a bicycle, you don't immediately ride around the neighborhood, you probably fall off. And you get back on and you keep doing it until you master it. Now, there's some question out there of where emotions, what generates it and where they come from. And there's some issue whether it's universal or it's not. But my thought about that is that I don't need to know the workings of an internal combustion engine to drive my car. I need to know how the car works and how to get the most out of it. So when I explain that to the young women, I then could take a look at their shame. I could take a look at their anger or help them take a look at it. I could also do the same with the staff because now they had a handle on it. Okay, it's a tool. I can learn how to deal with that. When I see anger, that means that I'm perceiving a threat. When I perceive anger in you, it means that you perceive a threat. So I can begin to question what threat you see and what role I play in that. So that's the overview. I hope that answers the question.
In spades. It answered a bunch of questions I didn't ask. It created a few more I'm going to have to ask. Now, I really appreciate how you walked through that. And even from the outside looking in, the value of, instead of looking at somebody and saying, well, they're just angry, well, they're just sad, they're just frustrated, they're upset. Well, why? And
Yep.
Maybe it's something I said or did. Maybe it's their perception of what's happening in the moment. Maybe it has nothing to do with anything that's going on in this room right now. And maybe we can't accurately guess. But if we walk through the context of the current situation and what we know about our relationship and our history and all of these things, we can probably get pretty close to understanding why somebody is feeling the way that they are. And if we put that kind of effort in, now we can adapt how we approach them, the situation, the outcome relationship we're trying to maintain or achieve, and be far more successful.
Yes. Now, let me point something out, which has just got a little bit of a bugaboo with me.
Please.
You asked the question, why are they angry? Or why are they this? I would encourage you and your listeners to not necessarily ask why. And here's the reason for that. When you ask why, you open up yourself to an excuse. Why are you doing this? Well, I'm doing this because. Instead of asking why, and I'm not saying you need to avoid it, but instead of asking why, say what. What is going on that is creating this situation? What's happening? Because when you ask what, now you're looking for the basis of what's going on behind the emotion that's leading to the emotion that you're experiencing, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense, and I love it. I think that's a fantastic adjustment. When I said it, I was thinking more internally. Like, so if all of a sudden you looked angry, I wouldn't necessarily ask you, why are you angry? But I would think to myself, well, why is he angry? But even that could lead to rationalizations. It can lead to my bias coming through. But if I was to ask myself, well, what just happened that caused him to react angrily? Now it's leading me to a more productive potential answer.
Exactly. And that's why I pointed it out. The second thing I would point out is that what I write about is a basic relationship rule. And what that is that everybody in every situation does the best they can, not the best possible, but the best they can given two things: their model of the world, how they perceive what's going on, and their skill sets. So if you understand that, you can avoid judging. What I see what's happening is I see what you're doing and how you're interacting with me. So what is the basis of that? Is the basis of your model how you perceive what's going on or how I perceive what's going on? Or is what I'm perceiving the basis of the fact that you just don't know how to deal with me, and that's a skill set issue. So if you have that, that also helps you to avoid judging and gives you the opportunity then to explore what's going on, to then change or ameliorate what's happening to make it move in the relationship move in the direction you want it to go.
We'll talk about words to live by. just understand that people are doing the best they can in any given situation based on the models that they have to process what's going on around them and their skill set, their ability to do so.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to apply that. How much less would we get angry at children if we were able to keep that in mind?
Yes, exactly.
For leaders who walk around expecting their frontline employees to act like business owners, even though nothing in their life has ever taught them how to act like business owners.
Yes.
Maybe we wouldn't get so upset there. For business development professionals that are upset about how a potential customer is acting with them. Well, maybe the last 900 salespeople that person talked to gave them a different model that now we have to break through. So understanding that is so powerful. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Exactly. And again, it avoids judging, because I know with my grandkids do stupid stuff. And my initial reaction is it pisses me off. But I have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, what's going on? How do they see what's happening? What are their skill sets? What are they capable of doing? Now then, with that information, I can intervene with them, either going up and give them a hug or whatever I happen to be, or taking a step back and leaving the room for a minute and taking a breath.
Yeah.
Either way.
And sometimes that's the best decision we can make. Walk away.
Exactly.
Come back in a minute. All great points. I had something else I was going to share there real quick, and I forgot what it was. Well, it'll come back to me if it was important.
It will.
I appreciate your confidence. When you were going through your initial answer, the two first emotions you brought up were anger and anxiety.
Yes.
And obviously there's a huge scale of emotions from the most positive to the most negative. And so to choose only two to talk about is like close your eyes and throw a dart. But I feel like when people think about emotions and emotional regulations and dealing with emotion, that family of angry emotions is often the ones that the family that comes up first or that we think about the most. And in your work that I was reading, preparing for the conversation, you talked about using anger as a strategic tool. So I'd like to capitalize on what you started a few moments ago and ask you, how can we use anger as a strategic tool?
That's an excellent question. Before I get to that, though, let me correct one thing. There's a myth out there. There's a couple of myths. The first one is that there are good and there are bad emotions. And that's a myth because all emotions are adaptive. And the reason why I point that out, Mike, is this. If you think some emotions are good and some emotions are bad, the implication is there are some emotions that I should eliminate and other emotions that I should keep. For example, I don't want to get a bad review on my books. I don't want to, if I'm working, I don't want to get a bad review at work. So if you think of something as bad, it's something that you want to move away from. If you think of all emotions as adaptive that can help us, now you're open to accepting and validating all emotions that you experience, regardless of what they are, and learning how to use them. Okay, so regarding anger, the myth about anger is that it's a negative, destructive emotion. And that's the way it's experienced. Again, anger prepares you for war. So of course, you're ready for battle. But here's how you use it as a strategic tool. If you get angry and you perceive a threat, you accept and validate the fact that you perceive a threat. I'm angry, I perceive a threat. When you take a step back and you assess that and you see, well, wait a minute, there is no threat. What the person said to me, he didn't understand how I was going to react to it, or he didn't mean it that way, so I'm going to let the anger go. If it's a real threat, I'm going to use my anger to motivate me to take action to eliminate the threat. Let me give you an example, not with men, but with women. Years ago, I went on a forum on LinkedIn, a women's forum, and I said specifically, look, I'm a man. I want to know how you as a woman deal with anger. And over 2,000 responses said to me, I as a woman cannot express anger directly because if I do, I get labeled as a bitch. I guess I can say that. If not, you can edit it out.
Speak freely, sir.
Okay. I get demeaned, I get marginalized. So I, as a woman, cannot express anger directly. That was many years ago. Incidentally, as a sidebar, I went on a podcast last year and found out that it's still the case. Women are not really because of cultural display rules, what they're called, women are not permitted, if you will, or accepted as expressing anger. So my response to these women was this: okay, do not express your anger directly, but don't deny it and don't let it go. Keep the anger because you're going to need the anger to motivate you to take action to eliminate the threat. And here's how you do that. You may take action indirectly. You may find out how you need to get around the person you have to deal with. How do you deal with them in ways that will not endanger you, and so forth. So that's using anger as a strategic tool. You take the energy of that anger to motivate you to figure out how you can eliminate the threat. And men do the same thing. Men, by the way, we use anger as what's called a secondary emotion often. And that leads to another myth. The myth is that anger is always a secondary emotion. No, it's not. Sometimes men are justifiably angry because there's a threat. But we as men don't like to feel sadness. We don't like to feel anxiety as a general rule, not specifically. So what we do is we suppress the anxiety, the sadness, and we manifest it as anger. So that we're not really angry. We just don't want to admit, I'm sad, I'm hurt. So that's anger as a secondary emotion. But again, to answer your question, you use all emotions and you look at the message and you use the energy of that emotion to motivate you to take corrective action. Again, if I'm anxious, I need to study. If I'm sad because I've lost something important to me, I need to retreat and recover. Does that answer your question?
It definitely does. Thank you. It answers it very well. And now it will give me time to think after. How many times have I felt angry because I really was angry or because I was covering for another emotion? So thank you for giving me something to think about. The other emotion that you mentioned, well, you mentioned two more, anxiety and sadness. But to look at anxiety for a moment, I feel like anxiety can be on a sliding scale. Some people can feel a little anxious. Some people can feel crippling anxiety, and it can change from person to person and situation to situation and trigger to trigger and so on. But if I'm going to begin, I don't want to say it like it's a question. As I begin to look at emotions as tools and say,
Right.
okay, well, if I'm feeling anxious, how do I channel that anxiety to adapt my behavior to achieve the outcome that is important to me? How can people channel anxiety so it's not as crippling as it may be and opens up
Okay.
new alternatives for them?
Good question. There is anxiety as distress, distress. That's the one that's disabling. That's the one that's crippling. And the way that manifests itself is, well, I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I was working, I'm retired now, but I was going from my office to my classroom at the university here locally. And I recognized what for me was anxiety. And I need to say that in order to use emotions as tools, people need to know how their body manifests an emotion. I need to know what anger in me feels like when I express it. I need to know what anxiety in me feels like when I express it. So for me, anxiety is butterflies in my stomach. So I'm driving to the university and I'm feeling anxious. Well, if I had had reacted to anxiety as distress, I'd have said, "Oh my goodness, what's going on? I can't think of anything that's wrong. I've gone over. Do I have my notes? Is everything okay at home? Is everything okay at work? I can't find anything wrong. So since I can't find anything wrong, I really must be in deep yogurt because I can't figure it out. That's anxiety as distress." What I did was I said, okay, I can't find anything wrong. This is the assessment phase of the emotional process. So since I can't find anything wrong, the anxiety I feel must be gas, and I'm going to let it go. Now, had there been something wrong, had I figured out, wait a minute, you know what? I did not turn in my keys when I left the institution. That would be anxiety as eustress, eustress, telling me that I need to be aware of a situation that could represent a threat. Had that been the case, I would have turned around and took my keys back to the institution. That would have been utilizing anxiety as a tool to alert me to a situation that needed my attention and taking the action that I needed to do to correct the threat so that it didn't get worse, if that answers your question.
It definitely does. I think we've safely crossed the does that answer your question bridge a few times. You're doing
I won't ask it again.
I might be already setting the record for how many notes I've taken in the first 20 minutes of a conversation. So no, I'm eating this up. I really appreciate it. If I'm asking for a friend that may or may not be a bald guy with a beard looking back at you right now, when I think about sometimes and I'm feeling anxious, certainly not all the times, but a common time would be I had an expectation that's not being met. And
Yes.
it might not be a critical expectation. So it could be my son has a sports game. We know that we really wanted to be out the door by like 9:15 to give us plenty of time to get there.
Yep.
It's 9:20 and no one's in the truck yet. But in reality, if we leave in the next 10 minutes, we're probably going to be on time anyway. And in ultra reality, even if we're 15 minutes late, nobody on this planet is going to be any worse for it. But yet, because my expectation was we're going to be in the truck by 9:15 and it's now 9:22, I feel my anxiety starting to build. And rationally, I know all of what I just told you, like in the moment. I can feel why I'm getting anxious. I can tell myself all of the things I just told you, but it doesn't make the anxiety go away. So besides just saying, Mike, you're insane, for people that find themselves in similar situations, are there either regulation techniques or internal talk tracks or ways to deal with anxiety like that when rationally I can tell you what's going on, but I just can't get past it?
Right. In that particular, because I've experienced the same thing, by the way. What you have to teach yourself to do. And the way you learn this, by the way, is to do it with every emotion. Now, you might think it's kind of silly. Wait a minute, if I'm happy, why am I taking a step back and taking a deep breath? I don't need it because I'm happy. No, what you're doing is you're building in a habit structure. And you need to, in order to build a habit, you need to do it over and over again. So when you learn that, when you get anxious with your son, you take a step back from the situation, you take a deep breath or two or whatever you have to do,
200.
and then you can say, wait a minute, what is going on here? No, I can't get rid of the anxiety. It's going to be there, but I'm not going to let it dictate what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with what my cortex, the cerebral cortex. The emotions, by the way, comes from your amygdala. That's the part of your brain that's setting up the emotional reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an amygdalic reaction. You don't have to do anything with that. You can say, look, yes, I'm anxious. I'm worried about this, but you know what? I'm just going to go with the situation and I'm going to realize there is no threat here. And what will happen then is the anxiety will diminish and go away. Don't try and make it go away. You can't. But what you can do is you can say, okay, I'm anxious. That is what it is. But realistically, there is no threat here. And so what I'm going to say is, okay, kid, get your ass in gear. We need to move.
Get in the truck.
Get in the damn truck. That's exactly correct.
I think you probably just went a long way in answering the follow-up question that I had in mind. Again, reading some of your work, when you talked about building habit structures.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure if we're going to look at learning to, and if I'm using the wrong word, correct me, learning to control our own emotions, building habit structures is likely one key piece to that for sure, if not maybe the key piece to that. What other recommendations would you have to help us learn how to control our own emotions?
The use of the word control is probably good because yes, you are, but you're not actually controlling the emotion. What you're doing is you're controlling your response to the emotion based on how you assess what's going on. And the reason why I say that, Mike, is this. If you try and control the emotion, what you're really saying is, I'm going to make the emotion go away. I'm going to make the anxiety disappear. It doesn't work that way. But if you take action in order to deal with a situation that your emotions are telling you exists, now the emotion goes away on its own because the brain has done what it is designed to do. It created an emotion to generate a response in you. You generated the response. The emotion is not needed anymore. So that's how you deal with that. I think the important thing for our listeners to realize is they need to learn what the message is of each emotion. And probably the best way to do that, they can go to my blog, theemotionsdoctor.com, and in the upper left-hand corner, there's an index button. They can hit that, and they'll get a drop-down menu by category, and it'll give them access to all of the articles that I've written. There's about 200 plus on there. And then they can learn what each emotion tells them. And when they do that, now they're prepared to say, okay, I'm anxious. That means I'm perceiving a future threat. I'm angry because I perceive a current threat that I'm going to go to battle with. I'm fearful because the threat might kill me. I need to get out of here. With the information, armed with the information, what each emotion tells them and how they experience the emotion in their body, and understanding the emotional process, which is very quick, and then they can assess, step back, and so forth. Now they're equipped to utilize the information the emotion's telling them to make a decision about how they want to respond. But it takes time and they need to practice it. And they're going to make a lot of mistakes before they get it right.
That's how we learn anything. At least that's how I ever learned anything.
Exactly.
Go out and screw it up a bunch of times, start screwing it up a little bit less, and start kind of getting it right. It's about the only learning curve I ever knew.
And they need to understand that they need to apply the basic relationship rule to themselves equally well as they apply to others, which means if I screw up, I'm doing the best I can in that situation, given the model of the world, how I perceive what's going on, and my skill sets. If my model is inaccurate, I need to change it. If my skill sets are off because I just don't know how to interact with you, then I need to learn how to interact with you. I need to say to you, I need you to help me learn how I can better interact with you. That'll improve my skill sets. So it's the same approach, same model.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. And I believe I'm picking up on now I'm losing my words, the importance of that assessment stage.
Yes, that's critical.
I feel like your whole cycle is clearly very important. And I don't mean to minimize any of it.
No.
But if I can increase the speed and the accuracy of my recognition by understanding how my body reacts.
Yes.
And then if I can really drive my assessment, so over time I become more accurate, more contextually appropriate with my assessments, then I can likely do a better job, as I say in air quotes, controlling my emotions and taking the right action based on what I'm trying to accomplish and who I'm trying to accomplish it with in that situation.
You got it. That is the key. And when I do make a mistake, or you do make a mistake, you need to understand that you can say, hey, I'm sorry, I screwed up, and start over. That's exactly correct. It's the assessment phase. And facilitating the assessment phase is taking a physical step back from the situation. When you take a physical step back, you create distance between you and the situation, and to take a deep breath or two, because that lowers your arousal. Both of those are important. If you take a physical step back, if I'm upset with my grandkids and I take a physical step back, it gives me a better perspective. If I lower my arousal, I'm not going to do something dumb. More than likely.
or less dumb, dumbish.
Or less dumb.
Instead of all the way dumb. But I love how you say create distance using recency bias to my best advantage. I was recently working with a construction company, and a lot of the guys in there ride motorcycles. I do as well. And so the analogy I used was riding a motorcycle, and we're taught, unless you're lane splitting in Southern California, because why wouldn't you? We're taught that you're supposed to leave space for safety, which is true. I certainly don't disagree with that at all. But we started working through that. It's like, I'm not, in a way, of course, I'm leaving space for safety. But what I'm leaving space for is decision-making time. I'm giving myself a wider perspective, more time to make decisions. So when things happen in front of me, that extra quarter second or whatever it is that I get at 80 miles an hour is enough to hopefully save my life, save my wife's life, not do anything that didn't need to be done. And so when I hear you say, take a step back and distance yourself from the trigger, from the situation, from the emotion or whatever, now we're creating that mental space to give us the distance to make a better assessment and decision before re-engaging.
Right. Because if you think about it, if anger is preparing you for war and for battle, what are you prepared to do? You're prepared to go forward into it. And that's the nature of the emotion. If I'm going to battle with you, I can't go to battle with you unless I engage. But if I take a step back, now I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, before you engage, assess. When I assess, by the way, I don't lose any of my options. When I assess and I take that step back, I can still go to battle with you if I need to, but it's a choice, not a reaction. It's a response, not a reaction. And it's the response that I'm going for. It's the response that enables you to use your emotions as tools, because what you're doing now is you're looking at the message of the emotion that your brain has prepared you to take, you're assessing it, and you're choosing how you want to respond rather than reacting. Because when we react, that's when there are issues. And that's what happens with men who we haven't read it recently, but in the past it was, oh, I beat up my girlfriend because she made me angry. No, she didn't make you angry. You're responsible for your own. But it's the anger that if I take a step back, I'm not going to react by going off on you. I'm going to wait, take a step back, take a deep breath, and then decide.
I love the way you separate response, which is a choice, from reaction. If I react, it's like the doctor hits me on the knee and my foot comes up. There was no conscious thought process. It happened.
Yep.
But if I create that distance and respond, now that's a
Yep.
choice. And to even get back to the example you just used, I had to get it. I don't know how many times I had to hear it before I finally started believing it. But, and this could be true for any emotion, but to use angry, which you just said, whatever that other person didn't make me angry.
No. Nope.
The story I told myself about their actions in relation to my expectations is what made me angry.
You got it.
And then I rationalized my poor behavior because, Ed, you're the one that made me angry. I couldn't possibly be responsible for that. So now I get to swing on you and feel better about it. So It took me too long to learn that lesson. I had to be told by multiple people over probably multiple years before that set in.
We as men, it's a tough lesson to learn.
Well, for me personally, I think most lessons are tough lessons to learn. When we're talking about reactions, and something else that I picked up on when I was on your blog, getting ready for the conversation, I feel like often when we're having conversations with people, we don't realize that the words we use can create unanticipated reactions.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, and I would love for you to go both directions with this, whatever order you want, please, and take as much time as you want, please. It's true in our external conversations, me talking to you, and it's also true and maybe more important in our internal conversations, because words create emotions, emotions create reactions, reactions drive behavior, and so on and so forth. So before I jack this thing up any further, could you please help us understand why word choice is so important in both conversations, and provide us with any guidelines, techniques, methodology you have to support that?
Okay. The reason why language is so difficult is because it's often ambiguous. We use a word and we think we understand what that word means, and we don't. For example, if I say to you, that was crazy, you may see that as, I mean, if you're a mental health professional, you're saying, what, you're accusing me of being psychotic? No, I'm not. I'm saying crazy means it just doesn't fit the norm. It's outside of what I expect to happen. And I'm using the word crazy to explain that, justify it, and communicate to you how I see it. So if one way of saying it, the meaning of a word is how you the meaning of a word to you is how you respond, regardless of what I intended to say. Now, I've kind of screwed that quote up, but I think you get the idea.
Yes, sir.
So if I understand that, if I get a reaction from you that I don't expect, it very well could be that you have misunderstood or misinterpreted the word based on what you heard, not what I said. And if that's understood, now then I can say, wait a minute, I didn't create that in you. It's your perception. So I need to deal with your perception of what I said. And I can say to you, what did you hear me saying? Because what I'm seeing from you is that's not what I expected. When I said crazy, what I meant is just outside of the norm, outside of what I expected. I didn't mean you were psychotic.
Not yet. A quick
Not
call
yet.
out as I cut you off answering a question that I asked you to take a bunch of time to answer. You didn't say why, you said what. So circle back to something that you called out earlier. You
Yep,
didn't say why did you react that way. You said what did you hear in order to
exactly.
continue the conversation. So I just wanted to shout that out. That's another example of what you said earlier. So I apologize for interrupting.
No,
Please.
no, no, not at all. And we need to be very much aware of our internal dialogue, and here's why. What we say to ourselves, we accept as 100% accurate without question, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. So we need to be aware of our internal dialogue, because the way we explain things to ourselves, we accept it, we don't question it. We need to learn to question what we tell ourselves about ourselves, just as we do with others. One thing I used to say to the wards when I was dealing with them, if other people said to you the things you say to you about yourself, how long would you put up with it? And the answer is I wouldn't. I wouldn't put up with you saying I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm whatever it happens to be. But with our internal dialogue, we accept it and we don't question it. So we need to learn to assess. I was going to say be critical of, but that's not where I want to go. We need to learn to assess what we tell ourselves and the validity of that, just the same way we tell others. I mean, I like internal dialogue. I talk to myself all the time. And that's how I process information. The other thing that your listeners can do in terms of using internal dialogue is if they're struggling with an issue. This is just a technique they can use. What they can do is they can take a pad of paper or the computer, whatever, and they can say, okay, if somebody asked me this question, what is it I need to do when I'm in a situation that I'm not quite sure of? Because we are very good at giving advice to other people because we're objective. So what you do then is you write down your answer to that question as if you were advising somebody else. You take that piece of paper and you put it aside, come back to it in a couple of days and follow your own advice. So what that does, it enables you to then be objective about your own situation, because you're writing it outside yourself as if you're writing it to somebody else. And you can then circumvent your tendency to accept what you tell yourself without question.
That's a great technique.
Hmm?
I wrote that down as well. I think this is a valuable way to put it. And I've been writing a lot of the things that you said down, but I also made sure I quickly wrote down, if other people talk to you the way you talk to yourself, how long would you tolerate that? And I would imagine certainly the answer for me and maybe for many others is calculated in seconds.
Yeah, for all of us.
Yeah.
Because we tend to be self-critical, and that's a way to circumvent that.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about if you and I are talking and you react in a way that I didn't expect, that's likely an identifier or a word that I like to repurpose from earlier in my career, an alert signal.
Alert signal, yes.
That there's a misunderstanding here.
Yep.
Either because of the emotion I was feeling at the time, nervous, anxious, excited, whatever it was, that I didn't deliver the message exactly the way that I thought I was, or maybe I was just off the mark to begin with, or because whatever you're feeling at the moment, you didn't hear it the right way. And now we can start trying to find a way to work through that. I would love your thoughts on this, the power of expectations. Anecdotally, from the outside looking in with a lot of the work that I've done, I feel like our expectations in many ways serve as our first observation filters. We filter what we see and hear through our expectations.
Absolutely.
And they drive our reactions. I expected somebody to do X, they did Z. That makes me really happy. I'm surprised. I expected them to do X, they did Y. How could they? Now I'm furious. And their action may or may not require or fit that emotion, but because it was different than my expectation, that is why I react the way that I do. in your work, do you have any techniques, methods, experience, metaphors to help us adjust or understand the impact of our expectations?
That's a really good question, very broad. Let me see how I want to respond to that.
Take it anywhere you want.
If you think of the idea that how we perceive the world is filtered through our model of the world. Our model of the world is based on our past experiences, our culture, what we've learned, and most importantly, our expectations. Because our expectations are our predictions of what we expect to happen in that situation. And the predictions, like any prediction, aren't always going to be accurate. So if you understand that, and you've practiced taking a step back and taking a deep breath, and you're aware that what you perceive in the situation can be accurate or inaccurate, and it might be just an engine warning light telling you you need to get something fixed or checked out. Now then you're set up to say, yes, I have expectations. And if it works out, that's great. If it doesn't, something is going on that needs to be assessed and questioned. And that might be my expectation for what should be happening or your reaction to what is happening in that situation. So I need to look at both. First, I'm going to check out my expectation by confirming with you what's going on. And then I'm going to check out, or I might reverse it. I could do you first and me second. But nonetheless, then I'm going to check out, what did you see happening? What did you perceive me telling you? So I'm going to look at both. And when I look at both, I'll then be able to get a better understanding of what's going on and where I want to go forward with it, with you in this relationship.
I think that's a great answer. I appreciate it. Thank you. And it probably doesn't fit completely, but for me, in many ways, my greatest teacher is my young son.
Absolutely.
Because I can't tell you how many times a week, I could probably go a day, but I'm going to give myself the benefit of the doubt and say maybe it's only once a day, but that's probably not entirely true. I ask him to do something and he goes and does something that I perceive to be different.
Yep.
And so I'm like, dude. And then he turns around and very clearly explains to me why he believes he's doing exactly what I asked him to do. And I've got to sit there and go, oh shit, he's right.
Yep.
And either he's going to go do that or I have to clarify my explanation and my expectations because I didn't get it right the first time. And because he's a young guy, he doesn't have any filter. He doesn't have any social polite. I'll just go, no, Dad, this is what you said.
Yep. And that's a perfect example of what I'm saying. He is doing to you what I've suggested that you can do to him and to other people. He is then clarifying for you what he heard you say. And if it fit or it didn't fit what you say, now you can correct it and you guys move forward. Because it might also be that he says, this is what I heard you say. And it might be, okay, that's not what I meant. So let me correct that. Or you misunderstood what I said because whatever situation you're in, you wanted to perceive it that way. So that's the way you heard it. So it enables you to interact and decide how you guys want to move forward. That's an excellent example, Mike.
Well, thank you. Conversations like this too made me think of my grandfather, my dad's dad, and we lost him a long time ago. He had a stroke, and he survived, I think, 8 or 9 years after his stroke, and he had aphasia. So for people that, I'm not a doctor to explain aphasia, but it seriously impacted his ability to vocalize his thoughts in a clear, concise manner. Probably the simplest way to say it. And he was a very, very, very smart guy. And so his frustration would boil over when somebody wouldn't do what he thought he asked.
Yeah.
He has a medical diagnosis here. Like there's a very real reason why this is happening. But every once in a while, he would slam his fist on the table or the counter or whatever. And he would just say, listen to what I think, not what I say.
Yep.
And in his situation, it was very true because he couldn't always say what he was thinking. But in our situation, it's important, I believe, that we work as hard as we can to line up what we say with what we think in order to manage not only our expectations, but then our observations, responses, and reactions to what people do next.
Oh, exactly. And I understand. I had a mild stroke about 2 years ago, and it affected my ability to verbalize. It didn't affect me cognitively. I could still think, but my mouth could not move to get the words out. So I understand exactly what I'm fine now. I'm completely recovered, but I
Thankfully.
understand exactly he was much worse than I was. But it's a really frustrating situation to be in. You know what you want to say, but you're not saying it. So people are not getting what you're saying because you're not telling them.
Yeah.
So what he said was absolutely correct. Don't react to what I'm saying, react to what I'm thinking. Unfortunately, we're not mind readers, but in that situation, you then probably adapted to him to say, okay, let me help you express what you're saying so we're on the same page. So that's an
Yeah.
excellent example.
Well, thank you. I'm 2 for 2. I'm done. I'm going to
You
tap
are,
out.
you're good.
No more examples for the rest. I want to go out on a win. As I was reading your work, again, preparing for the conversation, I saw you write about something that I feel like is a fantastic opportunity for people to use. And I would love to ask you to get a little bit deeper into it. And that was our ability to use metaphors in order to
Yes.
connect with others. I would love if you could walk us through the power of using metaphors, how you specifically write about it and apply it to your work, and how that can enhance our connection with others.
That's an excellent question. And by the way, let me take an aside and say, I really appreciate you doing your homework.
Oh,
That is
sure.
so gratifying to me that you did that. And it's validating, and I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm not going to disrespect you, your career, and your time by flying blind. I appreciate you being here. You got a lot of great things to talk about.
Thank you. I had to learn to use metaphor. And the reason I had to learn to use metaphor is because I could not communicate using the language that I had out of graduate school. My language was here, and the language of the young women I was working with was here. And there was a gap, and I couldn't go in and express to them what they were feeling in clinical language that I learned in graduate school. So I had to figure out a way that I could use what they knew in order to help them understand the concepts that I was trying to get across. So metaphor does that. So if I know, for example, that let's see, that I'm trying to come up with a good example.
Take your time. I
Well,
know it's
okay. How about an example of how to illustrate shit happens? Okay, you are driving your car and you're in the left-hand lane and you're watching cars in the right-hand lane, and the light changes, and the the car in okay, the guy behind there's one, two, three. You're the second car in the left-hand lane and the right-hand lane.
yep.
In the right-hand lane, the car in front of you begins to move. You don't move fast enough, but the guy behind you anticipates that you're going to move and crashes into you. You've done nothing wrong. Shit happens. There's no blame. There's no excuse here. He anticipated it, and it just went bad. So what I try and do with metaphors, I try and take a situation that might not be the best one, but I try and take a situation that you can relate to, that illustrates the point I'm trying to make, and use that to help you see it from your point of view. And when you get it, you get what I'm trying to say in language that you understand. Metaphor is very powerful. That was the emotions as tools models. That's a metaphor.
And I imagine the metaphors are even more powerful if it's a shared experience.
If it is, that's correct.
And I know the word authentic gets thrown around so much these days that it's just kind of tough to avoid it.
Mhm.
But if it's a real shared experience, like I'm not just making this up to make it sound like we have something in common. Like it's something that, at least if not whole, in part, you and I have shared together at some stage in our lives. If we can use that experience as a
Yes.
metaphor, I'm imagining there's different parts of our brain that light up and chemicals secreted in bonds and trust and things that are
Mhm.
built. And then it allows us to move forward together.
Exactly. Another metaphor would be, and I've often used this when I'm doing leadership training, is if I want to get you to up to a point where you can understand what's going on. Now, if I set this up, imagine that like we're in a room and I want to get you to the left-hand corner of that room. And I want to get you there because it's to your benefit and my benefit. Both. If you understand this, you're going to do the work that's going to benefit you. It's going to benefit me. So our hands are interlocked. You're moving backwards. I'm moving forwards. If I push you into that corner, you're in the corner where you need to be, but you're going to be pissed off at me because I pushed you in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Or I manipulated you in the corner. However, if I let you push me while I'm guiding, push me into the corner, now we are in the corner where you need to be and I need to be for both our benefits, but you're not pissed off at me because you pushed me in the corner. So that's a metaphor for leadership. Now I could explain that. And I can say, well, if you're a good leader, you need to understand what your people need, and you need to make it so that they understand. I could go on forever. But if I do this one example of showing you, you've now got it. And it's a metaphor. It's a physical metaphor, but it's a metaphor nonetheless.
I love it, and I'm going to give you credit for it when I teach, as long as I can remember. But in all honesty, I'm going to convince myself it's mine at some point down the road.
Feel free.
Well, I love it. And with that metaphor, you're speaking my language. Like, I'm coming unglued over here. As long as I know where I want the conversation to end, it doesn't matter where it starts. You start it wherever you want, and you feel like you're guiding it, and we end up where I need it to be. Everybody's happy.
Right, where you and I both need to be, because it's to your benefit to get me there and my benefit to be there.
I love it. I love it. So one more selfish question I'd love to ask. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and I want to be very respectful of your time. I really appreciate,
no problem.
Appreciate you being here today. One of the things that I'm obsessed with is, because I can't do it always as well as I would like, is developing the ability to stay calm. And I know we've probably touched on this, from breathe and step back and assess the situation and understand the context and manage your expectations and focus on the outcome and all of these things that we've talked about. I'm sure work into this, and I wish there was an easy button. I know there's not. From your experience, when it comes to helping people generate the capability of remaining calm in stressful situations, outside of what we already talked about, are there any additional techniques or approaches that you've seen successful?
What I would say to that is practice being proactive rather than reactive. And what I mean by that is this. When we talked about the emotional process, what I said was you observe, you're constantly scanning, you have an emotional reaction, and then you have that emotional reaction, and then you take a step back. That's being reactive. It's good, and it's what you need to do. If you want to be proactive, practice taking a deep breath and lowering your arousal before you go into a situation. But it takes practice. So when you know that you're going to interact with your son, you take a deep breath to lower your arousal. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, Ed, that's not being spontaneous. I want to go in and I want to hug the kid. I don't want to hit him. I want to hug him. So why am I taking a deep breath? Because you're practicing being proactive and lowering your arousal. And if you practice that when you go into a situation where you know it's going to be a tough situation, it's going to be emotionally arousing, whatever it happens to be, and you go in with your arousal lowered, you're better prepared for it. So practice doing it proactively. That's what I would suggest. And it's going to take time.
No doubt. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. I can't thank you enough for this entire conversation. I took 2 pages of notes. I promise at no point I was ignoring you. If you saw me look down, I was writing front and back. I was over here writing. So for people who listen to this conversation, they're trying to take notes and keep up, and they're like, wow, I really appreciate what Ed's saying. I want to learn more. I know you mentioned your blog once already. I might have picked up that you said you're working on a book, which I hope is true. But where can people reach out to connect with you to continue to learn from you?
The best way is for them to go to the blog and get the information from that.
Okay.
If they have a particular question that they need to ask, they can email me at theemotionsdoctor@gmail.com, and I can answer it. I can't do therapy over email, but if it's a burning question, they can just email me at theemotionsdoctor. It's TheEmotions, theemotionsdoctor@gmail.com. But the
Awesome.
best way, and so that's available to them. The best way is to go to the blog, or they can also Google Ed Daube podcasts, and they can get, there's a whole bunch of podcasts that I've done, which is more information there as well.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
And I'll include all of those links. So that way people don't have to go hunting for them. They'll be right in the
Nope.
show notes and people can find them.
Sounds good. I'm actually honored that you were taking so many notes. That's gratifying.
No, this was great. I mean, it's for me, selfishly, I get to learn from the people that I speak with. And
There you go.
I'm not going to lie. Part of my preparation is, what I want to know, what would I want to learn, what would I want to talk about? And just the way that you explained it. And I'll use a metaphor that you used earlier in the conversation.
Mhm.
I don't need to know the internal workings of a combustion engine.
Nope.
I just need to know how my car works. And for me, I would add basic maintenance. Like, does it have gas? Does it have oil? Does it have spark? Does it have air? I guess now it's basically a computer. So are the right wires plugged into the right places? But like, if I can even just have that basic understanding, then I can be far more effective in using it the right way or getting the most out of it. And I think you've done a great job with your approach, where for the last hour or so, we didn't get bogged down into gasket widths and spark arc and gas fuel mixture. And we didn't get air pressure, camshafts, none of that. By the way, I think that's all I know about internal combustion. So
Me too.
all at once. But we got into this is how it works. And I think for most people, that's the most important thing. Science is fascinating. Science is interesting. We can all go back and learn it and verify and build in. But to start with how to put it to use in your life is a great level to have the conversation out. And you did a fantastic job staying there.
Thank you. Let me amplify that for you, Mike. I had a car when I was a teenager, and the car was an older car, but I ran out of gas. And the reason why I ran out of gas is because my gas gauge said it was a quarter full, but it was empty. I only ran out of gas once. Why? Because I learned how to use the tool. I now learned that when my gas reached a quarter full, I needed to fill up. That is equivalent to learning how my body tells me that I'm feeling a particular emotion. I learned to read the tool, the information that my environment's telling me. So that's just another example that occurred to me when you said that.
I love it. That's perfect. We'll close on that one. Thank you so much, Ed. It's been a pleasure meeting you. I look forward to hopefully staying in touch and talking with you again. I really appreciate you sharing all your time and expertise today. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if you decide that you want to do this again because you've got more burning questions, no problem. I'll be glad to do it.
That sounds good. I'll take you up on that. That's great.
All right. Take care. Nice meeting you, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Ed, thank you so much for a great conversation. I really appreciate your approach. Thank you so much for all you shared, the experiences behind it, the applicability of all that you shared. Thank you so very much. And we got into a lot of really deep conversations, but even some of the quick takeaways, like just replace the word why with what, and watch how effective we are in our conversations. Remember that our emotions don't control us. And if we apply the processes you shared today, we can do a much better job controlling them. And I really liked how you talked about the importance of taking action. Thank you so much for a great conversation. I really appreciate all the insights and interaction. Thank you. And of course, thank you to everybody that took the time to listen to another episode. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Before you go, take a quick second, like the show, share the show, subscribe, comment, leave us your feedback. We would love to hear from you. Thank you. And of course, while you're online, take a quick minute and check out our sponsors. Head over to humantel.com. Enter the code INQUASIVE25 on the online training of your choice to learn how to identify when people's emotions are changing by recognizing shifts in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. I highly recommend it. I've done it all. Check it out at humantel.com. Any professional listeners, we're all professional listeners. Any professional interviewers in the audience, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com to get all your questions answered about the International Association of Interviewers. Who qualifies? What's the meeting schedule? What's the education like? How can you contribute? How do you network? All of those questions are going to be answered. That's where you can also learn about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. Again, who qualifies? How do you earn the designation? And what could it mean for your career? All that and more at certifiedinterviewer.com. And finally, while you're online, please head over to inquasive.com to learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and beyond, to teach them how to encourage people to share sensitive information under vulnerable circumstances in the face of consequences. We really appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.